Decision day for four-star elite offensive tackle Bennett Warren, Tennessee, Michigan, Oklahoma. If Tennessee were to land him today, Tennessee solidifies a top 10 class in my opinion. That and more. It's your Monday Locked On Vols.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Good Monday, everybody. It is a new week, and we welcome you back here to Locked On Vols. I am Eric Kane. It is going to be a monstrous week. Tennessee fall camp starts this week. Media day is tomorrow. First practice is on Wednesday. We got some recruiting announcements set to be had starting today and a couple more this week. It's going to be a big week, and we're going to recap it all for you right here on Locked On Vols, talking about it. And, it is your safe space. Tennessee fans, 5 days a week, every single morning, 30 minutes or less. Shout out to everydayers. Bennett Warren is set to make his announcement later today. Going to preview that announcement. Darnell Wright crushes his conditioning test with the Chicago Bears. And it's really funny how that happened. If you haven't heard, you want to stay tuned for segment 2. And then scouting the opponents, taking a break from the SEC slates to get into a little homecoming matchup against UConn. That is your Monday show right here on Locked On Vols. Okay, so Bennett Warren, really talented four-star offensive tackle from Fort Bend Christian Academy in Sugar Land, Texas. He has been, he has been high on Tennessee ever since his official visit. Really, I think this is one of those cases where, sure, Tennessee was talking to him. Sure, he was, answering the phone and saying that he was interested in Tennessee and all that. But until he got to campus, didn't really think it was a real thing. And he came in, I want to say, one of the last weekends for official visits in the month of June, and he fell in love. Truly loves Tennessee. Now, he's been kind of back and forth a little bit the last couple of weeks. Tennessee, Michigan, Oklahoma's in that conversation, as is nearby Texas A&M. I think there's been a little bit of a split decision there, maybe with him wanting to go one way and family another way, whatever the case is. But it's going to come down between Tennessee and Michigan, and he's set to announce that later today. Here on July the 31st. I think Tennessee's in a good spot. I do. Again, I continue to go back to he came in, he actually saw everything. He spoke with the coaches, spoke with players, saw everything firsthand, and I think that made the difference. Kind of came in here and fell in love. And so we'll see if he ends up choosing Tennessee, but a really nice prospect, okay? Offensive tackle, 6'7.5", 330 pounds. He is a 4-star rated prospect per the On3 industry rankings, which takes into account 25% of what On3 thinks, 25% of what, or I think it's actually 30%, 30, 35, whatever the percentage is. That's more for, I should know this, right? It's more for On3 and 247, and then a little less for Rivals, and then I think 10% for ESPN. Whatever the case is, 4-star rated prospect per the On3 industry rankings. 157th overall prospect in the country. 13th rated offensive tackle. 29th prospect out of the state of Texas, and you know that there are a lot of good prospects in the state of Texas. On3 has him as the 269th overall prospect, and ironically, again, because I work for On3, that's the highest by a mile, really, by a country mile, according to the other 3 publications that cover recruiting. 247 has him as a top 100 player at 82nd in the country. ESPN has him as a top 100 player at 84th in the country. And Rivals.com has Bennett Warren as the 230th rated overall prospect. So anywhere you want to spend it, he is a top 300 athlete. He is a top 300 prospect. And, if you're in the top 300 in your class, pretty much means you are a highly rated 4-star prospect, and you're doing a whole lot of things right, okay? There's a lot to like about you. You look at Tennessee's overall class, the committed class for the class of 2024. You take a look at it over at on3.com, and leading into decision day for 4-star offensive tackle Bennett Warren, Tennessee ranks as the 9th class in the industry or the comparison rankings over here at On3. Tennessee has 18 commits so far, led by, of course, 5-star wide receiver Mike Matthews, who came in a couple weeks ago, 4-star cornerback Caleb Beasley, 4-star quarterback Jake Merklinger, 4-star wide receiver Braylon Staley, 4-star tight end Jonathan Eccles, 4-star running back Peyton Lewis, 4-star athletes Boo Carter, 4-star offensive lineman William Satterwhite, 4-star offensive lineman Max Anderson, 4-star edge Kellen Lindstrom, and 4-star four-star linebacker who committed last week or a couple weeks ago as well, and Edwin Spillman. One other four-star I haven't mentioned is Marcus Gorey from Bradley Central, defensive back. So those are all the 4 stars and the 1 5-star so far in this class. Tennessee's put together a really, really nice class. But if Tennessee were to land Bennett Warren, this would be big because it gives you a first blue chip offensive tackle. Tennessee's got some nice players in the offensive line class, don't get me wrong. William Satterwhite, keeping him away from Clemson was huge, highly rated 4-star prospect. That's big. Max Anderson as well. Max Anderson from the state of Texas, 4-star offensive lineman. That's big as well. Nice little projectile piece there. You continue to go down the list. I think Gage Ginther is going to be the steal of this class from the state of Colorado. It lists him as an offensive tackle, but he's more of an interior guy. He's a 3-star. And then Jeremiah Hurd's a guy that I think will end up on the offensive line, but will probably start his Tennessee career in a couple years on the defensive line, as well as Jesse Perry, a 3-star prospect for Tennessee. Point being, I've mentioned all these guys, and with the exception of Jeremiah Hurd, who we're not 100% certain that he'll end up on the offensive line. He's kind of just a lineman right now. All these guys are pretty much interior guys. Again, Jesse Perry's an interior guy. Gage Ginther, of the bunch, could probably play offensive tackle, but he's more, again, of an interior guy. William Satterwhite is an interior guy. Max Anderson is an interior guy. Tennessee needs tackles. Tennessee is losing a whole lot of players after this season, potentially 7 to 8 offensive linemen, and there's not a whole lot of tackles in the depth chart that you feel good about, heading into the 2024 season. So I'm not saying if Bennett Warren comes in here and commits that he's going to be a starter in 2024. I'm just saying you need to have some options. You need to start getting some guys in here, develop, and plus by that time he'll be a brand new freshman, but you need to have some guys in here, strength and conditioning program for years to come, so you're not having to rely so much on the transfer portal. Bennett Warren is an offensive tackle, okay? And I think he's a pretty good one. And so really, when you look at this class, it is super well-balanced. It's well-rounded. You got a 5-star playmaker, wide receiver. You got some highly rated 4-star prospects at the positions that matter: quarterback, cornerback, a running back, secondary, offensive line, edge, linebacker, and then you have some projectile pieces below here as well. So if you get Bennett Warren, you're looking at a guy that kind of checks one more box and says, all right, you feel good about secondary, check. You feel good about quarterback, check. Linebacker, check with 2 and Jordan Burns and Edwin Spillman, and maybe more to come. But what about offensive tackle? Offensive line, interior, check. But you've got to have an offensive tackle, and that Bennett Warren would kind of check that box and really give Tennessee another blue chipper and give Tennessee a whole lot to feel about. If he says Tennessee later today, Tennessee will have 19 commits. Remember, before Tennessee kicked off against whoever they played for the opener last year, Tennessee was at 21 commits. And so Tennessee, with another commit today from Bennett Warren, would move up to number 19. And I would imagine Tennessee would probably move up in the top 10 as well, and in the continue to move up in the top 5 in the SEC. So a big-time decision coming up. Bennett Warren, will he choose Tennessee? Will he choose Michigan? Will he choose a surprise in Texas A&M or Oklahoma? I do not believe Texas A&M nor Oklahoma are in this running. I believe it is Tennessee and Michigan, and I like where the Volunteers are heading into decision day. So we'll have to see. Big-time announcement for Bennett Warren. That's coming up sometime today. 4-star offensive tackle from the state of Texas. Hey, when we come back, speaking of an offensive tackle and Darnell Wright, boy, he is in the best shape of his life. Crushed his conditioning test for the Chicago Bears, but it's really funny how that went down. That and more coming up next here, right here on Locked On Vols. I want to tell you about our friends over at eBay Motors. For a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle as well. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts or accessories, I encourage you to head on over to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure that every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to the My Garage and look for the green check to know that the part will fit, or your money will be back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop at eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed with eBay Guaranteed Fit. Get the right parts, the right fit, the right prices, all with ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Welcome back in here to your Monday edition of Locked On Vols. Appreciate you guys for being here at _Caner and at Locked On Vols. That is where you can send in your questions for the mailbag edition of the show. That is tomorrow right here on Locked On Vols. Fall camp starts tomorrow with Media Day. First practice is on Wednesday. Anything you guys want to know, any questions you have on Tennessee football, recruiting, maybe it's basketball, baseball, whatever it is, at _Caner and at Locked On Vols for Twitter Tuesday. Mailbag edition of the show. Don't forget, as always, everydayers, you guys know it, but if you're not an everydayer, subscribe to Locked On Vols on the YouTube channel, or please, wherever you listen to your podcast. Darnell Wright, number 10 overall pick in the 2023 NFL Draft. The Chicago Bears traded back from number 9 to number 10 and went with Darnell Wright. I thought Darnell Wright would probably go in the mid-teens, mid to late teens. There were a lot of teams in there that liked him a lot. Tampa Bay liked him a lot. New England liked him a lot. Chicago liked him a lot, but with Chicago being a top 10 pick, I found it hard to believe Darnell Wright would be a top 10 overall pick, but there he was. They took him, they traded back, they knew they were going to take him, they knew that nobody was going to take him at number 9. The Eagles moving up to get somebody else. They moved back number 9, got some capital, and took their guy in Darnell Wright. And so, Darnell Wright's been one of the better stories, has been one of the better examples of players under Josh Heupel. Come in, get a whole lot better, become a draftable player, put yourself in best position to be drafted and selected as high as you can and go out there and make money. And that's what Darnell Wright has done over the course of his 2 years with Josh Heupel. Again, came in and started right away as a true freshman in 2018, and he's been here for 2019. Has been here for a while and doing that here at the University of Tennessee. So anyway, he's going through rookie minicamp and all that, and the Chicago Bears had a conditioning test that they take before you get into minicamp. And every team does it. We don't know the specifics of what this conditioning test entails and all that, but every team in the National Football League does it. Tennessee Volunteers do it at the college level. We did it at Carson Newman. You have a conditioning test. But Bears general manager Ryan Poles came out and said when he met with the media the other day that number 10 overall draft pick Darnell Wright, quote, this is from Adam Hodge at CHGO Sports, Darnell Wright busted his butt this offseason. Wright has lost a ton of weight and a lot of body fat. He absolutely crushed the conditioning test like he didn't even break a sweat. Well, that's good news, right? I mean, Darnell Wright has always needed to kind of work on his weight, meaning in the winter of 2021, after the 2020 season, during the whole fiasco of Pruitt being fired and investigation and hiring, all that type of stuff, he came back and reported at like 355, and that was too much. And that's something that he talked to us about the media. He was like, hey, I was super lazy, I was fat, and I came back and I was super overweight and I've had to work. And before the 2021 season, he got his body weight down to about 335, which was good, and at points in times he's been around 330. But still, the Chicago Bears wanted to take a little bit more weight off him, and so he's been working. And of course, the sky's the limit for him in terms of an athlete, in terms of what he can do. I mean, so many people think so highly of Darnell Wright, and I think he's going to be a 10-year pro in the National Football League, 10-year starter. Just some really, really good stuff. But it was always good to see something that he's maybe struggled with, not a lot, but something he's struggled with a little bit in his past in terms of keeping weight off. He absolutely crushed his conditioning test, didn't even break a sweat. I mean, that's eyebrow raising, right? From the general manager of the Chicago Bears to say about you. And of course, they're going to be asking about the team's number 1 overall pick. And of course, that was Darnell Wright at number 10. Adam Hodge, again, coming back from CHGO Sports, and quote tweeted that tweet and said, update from Darnell Wright on this. He accidentally looked at the wide receiver conditioning test and was training for that one. It's longer and faster. So yeah, he crushed the O-line test, laughing/crying face. The formula's there, right? For every single year and every single offseason for Darnell Wright moving forward, the formula's there. You need to practice. You need to train for the wide receiver conditioning test. Put yourself in the best position available there so that when the offensive line test comes around, you absolutely crush it. Again, let's dial it back here, Uncle Rico style, okay? Different level, different time. Was not a good football player, not a brag whatsoever. But we had a conditioning test at Carson Newman. It was the shuttle. And it was so hard. It was so hard. And you would train all summer for it. And there were different tests, which I thought were just embarrassing to begin with because, like, the wide receivers had to average, you had to run it twice. The wide receivers had to average it in 56 seconds. The intermediates, which is where linebackers, what I ran, the tight ends and stuff like that, they had to average like 58 seconds. And then the big boys had to average 60 seconds. So you mean to tell me that a 325-pound offensive lineman or defensive lineman had to average only 4 seconds less than a 175-pound cornerback? That's just not fair to me whatsoever. But point being, we would always train in the month of May and June and July a little bit with the wide receiver DBs. We would run these things called quarters. They were brutal. Loved them. So much fun. But we would run the wide receiver and defensive back sprints, if you will. Quarters are, without getting too far deep into it, quarters, a conditioning test called the quarters, are essentially a series of sprints, and you run it out, then you get back down on the line, then you run it out, then you get back down. You do 10 of those. 10, 10, 6, that's one quarter. The linebacker portion of the quarters would be like, 40, 22, 16, 7, 35, 14, just intermediate stuff with a couple of long ones. The wide receiver ones would be like 35, 40, 28, 27, 10, 43, and so we would run those. And it always got you in shape so much quicker and you felt so much better about yourself. So yeah, when the conditioning test came around, you absolutely crushed it. I don't know what Darnell Wright's training was like, but if he was training to pass the wide receiver portion of the conditioning test, absolutely he's going to dominate the offensive line portion of that test. And I don't know if he did this. It sounds like he did this by accident. I think moving forward, he'll be doing this intentionally because, boy, that is hilarious. But of course, the blueprint's there, and he did it the right way. So Darnell Wright, off and running, doing a great job in the National Football League as he continues to get ready for his rookie season. Bennett Warren, he can look at a guy like Darnell Wright. He can look and see the progression of Glenn Ellerbe, who has not been the best recruiter on staff here for Josh Heupel. Nowadays, you got to not only coach well, but you've got to recruit or you're not going to have a spot on staff. I'm not trying to say Glenn Ellerbe is going to be fired. That's not what I'm saying whatsoever. But he's not been the best recruiter, in my opinion. But look at what he's done with Darnell Wright. Look at what he's done with Jerome Carvin. Look at what he's doing right now with Cooper Mays and Javonte Spraggins. Javonte Spraggins is going to be drafted next year. Look at what he did to Darnell Wright, a top 10 overall pick in the National Football League draft. If I'm Bennett Warren, and I've got a decision coming today. Of course, I would imagine his decision is already made, but I'm looking at that and I'm saying, man, I want to be a part of that. I could be a Darnell Wright. I could be the next guy that could go top 10 for Tennessee, especially as an offensive lineman. That type of production and development is what I want to get in Glenn Ellerbe and Josh Heupel. So I think it kind of goes hand in hand, just like I want to talk about Bennett Warren and Darnell Wright to begin this show, kind of going hand in hand. And that's why I think Tennessee should have no issue recruiting on the offensive line. And that's why I think Tennessee is in a good position to get Bennett Warren later today when he makes his announcement. All right, enough of the offensive line talk. Let's get back to our Scouting the Opponent series. We'll take a break from SEC play, a little homecoming on Rocky Top November the 4th with UConn. We'll take a look at the Huskies when we return right here on Locked On Vols. All right, guys, Scouting the Opponent series for the University of Tennessee this year. All right, it's week number, 10, game number 9, November the 4th. You come back to Neyland Stadium after being on the road the previous 2 weeks at Alabama and at Kentucky, getting off that gruesome 3-game stretch in SEC play where you host A&M and then you hit the road for Alabama and Kentucky. Before that, you had an off week, you had South Carolina. Before that, 2 weeks before that, you had Florida, of course. So the SEC slate is well underway, but you got to have time for homecoming. And that's when UConn comes into play, and they'll be at Neyland Stadium November the 4th, and we'll be bringing head coach Jim Mora Jr. Jim Mora Jr. is no stranger to the game of football. He's been a head coach in the National Football League. He's been around the Pac-12 for a while, UCLA, and he's entering his second season coaching the UConn Huskies. UConn was 4-32 in the 4 seasons prior to Jim Mora Jr. Last year, they went 6-7. A 6-6 regular season, fell to, I want to say, Memphis in the bowl game or somebody else. But anyway, was 500 in regular season play and went to a bowl. So almost doubled the wins from the previous 4 seasons in the year number 1 for Jim Mora Jr. So that's been really good. But there's not been a winning season for UConn since all the way back to the 2010 season where they went to the Fiesta Bowl. found some success in the early 2000s, but hasn't had a winning season since that Fiesta Bowl team in 2010. So they're hungry for a winning season, but I don't think they're going to get a win on November 4th at Neyland Stadium. Jim Moore Jr., again, 6-7 his first year at UConn. Overall in his coaching career, he's 52-37 in the college game. So they improved an awful lot, but it wasn't because of the ball going through the air in a forward motion. You know, the forward pass that's been around the sport of football for quite some time. Not for UConn. Not for UConn in 2022, okay? Listen to this stat. UConn ranked 127th in passing offense, averaging 112 yards per game last year. The 127th national ranking is something that we've mentioned numerous times, but usually on this show, we're referencing the pass defense for the University of Tennessee in 2022. This is passing offense for UConn, 127th in passing offense, 112 yards on average a game. And this is surprising, too, because UConn averaged over 20 pass attempts last year, but only had 10 passing touchdowns on the season and 10 interceptions to go along with it. Archaic is a word that used to describe that brand of the offense in 2022. Reasons for that: you had a transfer that came over gearing up for the 2022 season, to Taquan Robertson, but he tore his ACL in week 1. Therefore, being thrust into the action was a true freshman in Zion Turner, who was the starter last year. So, I mean, there's a reason for the struggles passing, because you had a true freshman taking over. That was plan B at quarterback. Those two guys are going to battle it out this year to see who's going to be the starter, and my money's going to be on Taquan Robertson, who really never got a go of it after transferring in, and finally he's healthy, and I think he'll be the starter for UConn this year. Wide receivers, the leading wide receiver, Aaron Turner, transferred out of the program, but you did bring back Kevins Clearcius, who had 24 receptions for 300 yards and a touchdown last year. You added a Michigan reserve tight end in Lewis Hansen, so that's good. You bring back into the mix Cameron Ross. He was a starter in 2019, put up big numbers for the Huskies. UConn didn't play in 2021 in the 2020 for COVID. In the second game in 2021, he suffered a season-ending injury, and then he got hurt in fall camp last year. So Cameron Ross, at wide receiver, has not played in a couple years, but it appears that he's healthy heading into the season, or at least heading into camp, and he's going to be added to that wide receiver room as well. Now, running back, they were pretty solid, okay? You bring back your top two leading rushers from last year, Victor Rosa, 636 yards, 4.5 yards per carry, 11 touchdowns. Devontae Houston, 600 yards, 6.9 yards per carry, and 3 touchdowns. UConn almost averaged 200 yards on the ground a game last year. And so you're adding back those two top rushers plus 4 starting offensive linemen, and I would expect UConn to be a pretty decent running team in 2023. Offense, passing-wise, will be a work in progress, of course, but running the football should be solid. You look over at defense, it was okay. Gave up 27 points per game, 380 yards a game. It was okay, but gave up 40-plus points to 3 Power 5 opponents. So when they were playing in their own ballpark, if you will, in terms of competition, they were okay. And those 3 games against Power 5 opponents where they give up 40-plus points really kind of skewed the points per game average for UConn in 2022. Runs a 3-4 scheme under Jim Moore Jr., led by Jackson Mitchell at linebacker, 140 tackles. He will be the captain and leader of the defense from the second layer. You add into the mix Eric Gilliard, a transfer from Kansas, to kind of work with him. Up front, you got a couple of defensive linemen, and Eric Watts, 7.5 sacks last year, 10.5 TFLs, and 50 tackles overall. That's a good place to start. You also add a couple of transfers like R.J. Wilkins from Illinois and Ray Eldridge from Richmond to kind of beef up the front. And then you look at the DBs in the back end. 2 true freshmen last year, 1 at corner and 1 at safety, were thrust into action, and that's Devontae Jones, 90 tackles, and Malik Dixon-Williams, 88 tackles. That ranked 3rd and 4th on the defense, respectively, in terms of tackles. So, it's okay defensively, adding a lot via the transfer portal. I think UConn's poised to take another step under Jim Moore Jr. Again, 6 wins in 2022, whereas they had 4 wins combined in the previous 36 games, 4 years under their previous head coach. So that's good to see. overall, this is a good breather for the University of Tennessee. You come off that stretch, you come home, a little home cooking, a little homecoming, right? You get back on the SEC slate next week at Missouri, and then you come back home for the Georgia game. Huge Georgia game at Neyland Stadium. That's going to be on November 18th, and then you conclude the regular season against the Vanderbilt Commodores on November the 25th. So that is a look at the UConn Huskies as we continue our Scouting the Opponent series right here on Locked On Vols. Tennessee should have no issue with UConn, but hopefully Tennessee will be playing for a big-time showdown. The anticipation will continue to build for Georgia coming up in a couple of weeks. All right, that's going to do it here for this Monday edition of Locked On Vols. Tomorrow, Media Day. Tennessee football season officially is underway with mini camp over on the University, or training camp over on the University of Tennessee practice field, Haslam practice field. We'll be over there. I'll be over there watching some practice, giving you all the we can handle at _Caner on Twitter, at Locked On Vols. If you guys have any questions, comments, concerns on anything, your voice can be heard tomorrow on the show at _Caner, at Locked On Vols. Twitter Tuesday, mailbag edition of the show. Go ahead and dial into it. Send me those questions and subscribe to Locked On Vols on the YouTube channel. Guys, I appreciate it as always. Thanks so much, and we will talk to you again tomorrow. This is Locked On Vols.